Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Beware Labs webinar series. Today's discussion will evolve around the topic of blockchain data availability. And I have with me here two people with extensive experience in tackling the challenges of providing Web3 developers with easy access to relevant blockchain data. They come from two companies who chose quite different approaches and came up with really innovative solutions thanks to the very strong technical teams and great leadership visions in their companies. The two companies are Covalent and Subsquid, and without further ado, I would like to ask our guests to present themselves, to say a few words about their experience, current position, and what is interesting to them about blockchain. Eric, would you like to start?
I guess we're going in alphabetical order. Yeah, or Ashtown, whatever. Anyways, those are a joke. We'll edit that out in post. Yeah, my name is Eric Ashton. I'm the head of ecosystem at Covalent. I spend a lot of my time working on all of the new shiny initiatives. So anything that is new, exciting, and on the cutting edge of where things are going is how I spend my time. More on the business and product side. I've been in crypto for a long time. I got in, I think it was 2014, trying to build something that just didn't scale. So I've been around for a while and seeing things come to fruition, and it's just been interesting how you have this idea of where things will go early on. You get really excited. Somebody else has the same idea. It gets 2.5% of the way. The market thinks it got 500% of the way there, and then you go back to reality only to let it sit for a couple of years. So I realize this is a game of patience, and so it's just fine. It's really exciting when you see good teams and good infrastructure and good products start to get built. So yeah, I've been here for a while, and I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Perfect. That's a very interesting presentation. I'm really happy to hear the optimism, and you talk like someone who's been around a lot and weathered down a couple of both difficult and successful periods. So, yeah. Okay. Moving over to Dima.
Mm, Hi everyone. Thanks for inviting. So I have both academic and engineering background. I've been doing Olympiad math and programming since the school years, and then I did my PhD and then later on postdoc in math, like a very specific obscure part of math called additive combinatorics. And then I got interested in crypto around 2017. I wouldn't lie, not uh, mostly because I was fascinated by how much people were making on like Bitcoin and Ethereum back then, and but still I was really interested in tech, so I kind of started as an independent researcher, and then joined a startup to build consensus for IoT data. So even back then, it was like interesting how we can actually marry two things that are really hard to marry, uh, blockchain and large amounts of data, uh, choosing the right design. Uh, the startup didn't quite work well back then, and in 2022, I started a new journey, building an indexing solution to an on-chain video platform so that one can deliver similar experience that you have for YouTube, at least for UX, and have a responsive data on screen. And later on, since there was such a huge demand for index data, we started Subsquid as a spin-off of this internal project, got internal funding, and since then we got like 4 iterations improving the way and the experience for developers to get the on-chain data for their apps and analytics.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually didn't know the story that you started with video streaming and then uh, saw a need for actual indexing and try to solve that issue as well. And with that in mind, I know your companies are taking quite different approaches to uh, solve some of the challenges of blockchain data access and retrieval. while Subsquid strives to provide developers with a toolkit necessary to index blockchain data on their own. Covalent is now providing developers directly with unified development API. And I am curious to know what was the reasoning behind these different strategies, and why you chose or you think this is a good fit in the current market. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, I can start. So, for us, the philosophy here is that the access to the on-chain data is the most important enabler for everything else. And normally, if you're building some non-trivial application, you would need to have this data presented the way that you like for UI. And back in the days when we were building this indexing solution for a video platform, the only way to get this data to our users was to scan through each block, retrieve these transactions, then decode them, transform it into a rich schema. In our case, that was then a GraphQL API, and then presented to the users. And like from the early days, it was super annoying that every time you need to make a change, you have to rescan the whole chain. And what's even worse, that most of the time the blocks were not interesting, not containing the data that we were actually interested in. So it was a very kind of obvious solution to have intermediary storage where we just have everything that the blockchain has, but in a format that is easy to scan and extract data based on specific filters. It turned out that this very simple idea is getting more and more compelling and more and more hard to implement as you have more and more data. So as we onboarded more chains, we had first like 100 gigabytes, then half terabytes, then eventually more than a terabyte. And this first approach, like putting everything in Postgres, just didn't work. And eventually in Subsquid, we ended up with a very efficient, horizontally scalable solution where on-chain data is split into chunks, distributed into independent workers, and that allows us to basically handle unlimited number of data and extract it efficiently, no matter how many networks we support. And another important point here is that in many cases, you can find an API that already gives you the data that you want. But if you're coming from a small chain, and in our case, we were starting in the Polkadot space, no providers were available whatsoever. So the only way to get the data that you need would be to actually build your own indexer. And for building an indexer, the key roadblock is actually access to the on-chain data, because then you hit RPCs. RPCs are expensive, and having this data at your hands at no cost would be like a complete game changer. This is what we're doing right now, providing this data for free.
Oh, that's quite an interesting journey you guys had, and very interesting approach. Let's move on to Eric and see about how Covalent is tackling this issue. I know Covalent, it's quite an experienced company in dealing with blockchain data, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about it.
So it's not actually, Dima, your experience isn't actually as different. I think it's just timing is it's like how you ended up with your solution. Ours is a little different. I think it's the nature of having a lot more time. So I'm not the founder, but I've known Ganesh and Levi since the weekend they started it. It started at a hackathon, and a mutual friend of ours said I had a startup. The startup failed, but I was looking for on-chain data. This was 2018. And I said, I need somebody because I just need a ton of Ethereum wallet addresses. And so I meet Ganesh at a coffee shop, and I say, okay, what is this data product? He says, and he's so excited. He says, we're taking all on-chain data for Ethereum. We're putting it in Postgres. and then we're normalizing it, and we're gonna need this giant replica of all Ethereum data. And he was so excited, and I got excited, and I said, "Cool, how do you make money?" He said, "I have absolutely no idea whatsoever." And so, because like I was like, no one had money. Like there wasn't an analytics product. There wasn't like who are you selling to, right? So I think it was the ability to have the idea that people will need full replicas, and it'll need to be structured and organized really well. And having that vision, and then 2 years with nothing to do. Like let's face it, there was nothing happened between like 2018 to 2020. There was nothing interesting in crypto. So if you were here and you were building, it was pretty quiet. Um, so him and Levi just had the luxury of that, of just silence, and trying to find product market fit until the first thing that actually got product market fit was an API, because people needed, I think it was consensus, they needed a full replica for some product they were building of all historical on-chain data. So all of a sudden you go from, bootstrapping everything to just finding revenue. And so like it just happened that the thought was like, okay, well, if they want this for Ethereum, and then I think like 6 months, 9 months later, like BSC launched, and then Matic got traction, and then became Polygon, and you started seeing all these ideas around EVM data. So we just happened to build one thing really, 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 really well that worked for Ethereum, to help to get all data for Ethereum, and it just so happens that we got lucky. We're not lucky, but like things worked out where the future to date has been predominantly EVM. There's been a couple exceptions here and there, but it's been a lot of the traction there. So when we index a chain, we take all historical on-chain data. So every log, every transaction, we put it in a database. And what we're doing is we're building APIs on top of this database. So our thesis is that people are going to need structured data. Like if you were seeing some inbound from people who want to build AI, they want to build all sorts of things, and what you need is large amounts of structured data. And from what I know of, we have the largest database of structured on-chain data. So right now we have it. It's only available for a handful of unified APIs. You can query across, one API will work across, at this point, over 100 blockchains. It gets really interesting when you open that up and you see what else it can do, or when people can build their own APIs. So it's just, our thesis has always been have all the data and then figure out what to do with it later.
Okay, so it seems like so interesting to me because it seems like your use cases were quite opposed in a way. Like in Dima's case and the Subsquid case, they had a very urgent need for blockchain data, and they decided to build them themselves. In return, Covalent had a vision about making data available without actually thinking about how to sell it, and discovered uh, the actual use case later when there was actually a need from the market. So yeah, it's very interesting to hear like how the roadmap of both company went historically from the start to where we are now. So next I have a question for Subsquid. I wonder, because we were working with data at Beaver Labs as well, and we've been doing our share of indexing on demand for a couple of our RPC customers, and I know that indexing data poses some challenges in terms of indexing time. Is there a secret sauce behind the optimizations that you managed to bring to the table in order to speed up the indexing time for big blockchains such as Ethereum? And if it's public information, I would be interested to hear a little bit about the overall architecture of your solution.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, let's settle on what we actually call indexing, right? So there are two things. First is like getting on-chain data in the raw format, and this is something that we left out of scope in our solution because this is already in our network. That is a decentralized data lake that you can efficiently query and get. And then there is the indexing where you get structural information from this raw on-chain data. So for example, you want to index all Uniswap trades, or like all the liquidation, or Lens protocol handles, whatever. In which case you're interested in a specific subset of transactions and a specific subset of EVM logs and a specific subset of contract state changes. And this is where things are interesting, because normally this is normally you would need some kind of a complicated transformations here that are not easily expressed, for example, as a SQL query. Sometimes a SQL query over raw on-chain data would be enough, but more often than not, that you actually need to have some non-trivial transformation or data enrichment. For example, you want to bring in some data from price feeds or whatever. And here, the easy part is when this indexing can rely only on the logs and transaction data, because in Subsquid we are very efficient of extracting batches of logs and transactions based on filters that, for example, I'm interested only in events matching this specific topic emitted from this specific number of contracts, or here is like a huge list of wallets. I'm interested in all transactions that were sent to or from these wallets. And even like for 100K wallets, this actually handled pretty nicely. So you get exactly the data that you want matching these filters. And then with this data, you do all the transformations and like put it whatever data target you want. So we can use it built in GraphQL API with this, like put into BigQuery, in the Parquet files and CSV, whatever. So analytics, real time, this is covered. But and this is very fast because it comes basically as a select from this distributed data lake. Things get interesting when you actually need to query contract state, because not all data is available as logs and transactions. Because sometimes the smart contracts are written in the specific optimizations that, for example, they do not emit events where you would expect them to emit events. Or sometimes you just need to figure out the specific information that is only available when you query the contract state directly. And this is actually the major slowdown, because any RPC call is very expensive. There are ways to optimize this. So for example, you can do multi-calls, which means that you can batch different RPC calls into a single one, call a specific contract, call a multi-call contract, originally developed by MicroDAO, that basically batches this information on chain and you get this data. It actually does help, but not necessarily this speed is acceptable. The most intriguing thing that we introduced recently is the support for state diffs and traces, which actually opens up the possibility to reduce the RPC calls or eliminate them altogether from the indexing. Basically, as long as you can map state changes to state diffs, and they are actually available on chain through like debug traces, and you can potentially get this data without even querying the state contracts directly. The challenge here is that it is fairly non-trivial to map the state diffs produced by Ethereum or like Gith or Aragon nodes into the actual change that you, actual state information that you would get querying the state contract directly. But having access to this raw data actually opens up the possibility to eliminate RPC access altogether. So basically you just get this data, get these traces, and it's enough to reproduce pretty much everything that happens on chain. I'm pretty much excited about this feature that we made available just like about a month ago with the Subsquid release.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Sorry,
Eric. Yeah, go.
I just want to ask a question. Are you seeing a lot, like most of the demand for this? Is it still? Are you? I'm assuming Subsquid, Substrate. You guys are still active in Polkadot, but where are you seeing the most of the demand for this? Like, is it because you guys, from what I understand, have a lot of different chains that you work with that are outside of EVM? Like, is this uniform, or is this mainly you're focusing on Ethereum for this?
Traces are supported for EVM, and actually for Substrate, things are easier because Substrate is actually better when it comes to tracing. Because unfortunately, EVM clients are forked, and like Polygon, Binance, Arbitrum, they all have their quirks, and we actually work together with Beware Labs, figuring out like how to patch and fix like these traces, because it's like actually breaks pretty much every day, one chain or another. But the good thing is that once we have these traces and logs ingested once, they stay forever, and we actually get this information which is actually really hard to get, available for free to the developers using Subsquid. And you can easily work with this data and query exactly what kind of state changes or traces you want to get.
Cool. I didn't know Substrate was easier. I just every time I look at Polkadot, I just think it just sounds hard because every like all the palettes are different. Everybody has their own bespoke data model. It just seems so complicated.
But it's just at a lower level, and surprisingly, Substrate is a lot more stable than this Go Ethereum forks and Aragon forks.
I'm not surprised. It's just more of how people structure the data. But it applies more to our approach
Yeah.
than anything else. That's why I was curious. But that's cool. Sorry, Radu, I was just curious, but back to you.
No, it's good because the purpose of the webinar is actually having an open conversation. I'm tired to be the only one asking the questions. You just said that the approach it's quite different in Covalent's case. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I alluded to it before. Like when we just take all of the on-chain data and we normalize it, right? Like a part of the secret sauce is a standardized schema. So the schema is the data schema is standard. So if you want to bring in a substrate-based chain, like I don't know, I think Bifrost is a substrate chain. Like I can't remember all of them. You bring them in. Their data does not look like Ethereum. It doesn't look like Polygon. It doesn't look like Aurora. It doesn't look like Evmos or Canto or any of these other chains. And so because of that, it doesn't match our database, and because of that, it doesn't work with our APIs. So it's a chicken. It's a frustrating position to be in because sometimes you see some excellent projects you'd love to work with. Like I think we've been talking to Near for years, and just haven't done it because it's like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? Where it's like you need either it has to be really easy to do, or there has to be enough traction to merit doing the work, or there has to be enough developer demand. And when we pull our developers every few months, hey, what chains are you guys looking for? Unfortunately for us, it's not top of mind. So it's like you can go for the low hanging fruit, which is even in our case, we have some chains that don't even have a lot of usage or a lot of traction, but they are 100% EVM, so it makes it easy for us to do. And so the commercial agreements and everything just sort of makes sense. Um, for us, like our go to market though is a little different. Where like we've built this, and I think we've product market fit with a bunch of our APIs, and like I think we've been around long enough where we're able to get to market. So I think we're out of the guessing phase of what we have to do, and it's just more like serving like a lot of customer feedback and a lot of problems. Or you talk to like two customers long enough, and they say, "Hey, can you build this? Because I know you have the data, and I can't get it from anywhere else." So because you already have the data, you can take that time and just go build out that API. Or like I said, in the long run, what we're really doing is like building out the infrastructure so we could build their own APIs on top of our database. So that's where we're going, and how we see it being a little different. Like at scale, I don't know if you guys know this. I know Radu knows this. Maybe Dima, you don't know this, and the listeners don't. But we are building a decentralized network of all on-chain data. So it's called the CQT network. And what that does is you could take all of our data. So if you could have like covalent patched ETH, covalent patched Moonbeam, covalent patched Aurora, covalent patched Arbitrum. And then anybody who's running an Arbitrum node / a Covalent node, you just patch it, and then all of a sudden you can get your data, like our data, into our schema, into like your own database. So you could do whatever you want with that data, but we're doing that in a way where people can query it. So you can still come back to our Covalent, the API, like you can go back to covalenthq.com. You can pay for your API calls, and it'll eventually just route to whoever is running the infrastructure for those specific chains. So it's almost like the way I joke about it is like think of a franchising model, where like people can run their own versions of their own data of different blockchains, but like all the traffic would be coming from us. Or if somebody wants to build on top of a decentralized network and build their own competing to the equity company or the for-profit company, and then they can. So that's how we're building it out. Now, that's where I think it's very different. So like we're focused on building the network, we're focused on building the APIs, but enabling people to build their own stuff, because at scale, that's what people want anyways. We're already starting to see it happen.
Okay, so here is where the two visions kind of merge together, because you're both thinking about the future in a way in which you give developers the freedom to choose the way they will use the data from both the companies. You actually answered my next questions, which was related to how do you see the future of development based on data availability. So you kind of presented as your vision at Covalent. If you want to add anything on that.
I gave a half response. So like I think what is going to happen is um, I think what you'll see is I think data availability because blockchains are public data. That's sort of the point. I think you'll see we're already starting to see it now where you have private companies who have their own blockchain, they have their own art, maybe it'll be an in-house RPC, but they're saying, "Hey, we actually do want your APIs. We do want this. We want to benchmark our data against Ethereum, Polygon, God knows what else." Or they'll have applications that will deploy on their chain, but are also going to deploy on other chains. So like you're seeing this in TradFi, you're seeing this in some other spaces. So we're seeing that happen now. It's very interesting. I think it's going to be a data availability game, and because as you're seeing with all these roll-ups like Evergreen with Binance, you're seeing Optimism, Arbitrum, you're seeing Polygon, you're seeing Avalanche subnets, you're seeing I don't know what else is there. There's so many other things. Everybody has an app chain strategy. Not even mentioning like Saga, Eclipse, and all these newer guys. So I think what it'll be like is there'll be a lot of chains. There'll be thousands of chains. I think there'll be tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of chains, like you're seeing with Cosmos already. I think a lot of them that are application based are just going to be EVM, not because it's good, but because it's ubiquitous and the tooling is there. Like I don't think the EVM is the best technology by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's where the tooling is, and it's where the imagination is on Ethereum. Um, I think that's part of the magic of Ethereum itself. But you will see that, and I think it's going to turn into a game of how do you standardize the tools, how do you standardize the APIs, how do you get people what they want, and then if you have all that structured data and it's open and it's accessible, what else can you do with that, right? Which I think like all the AI stuff is going to bleed right into this when you start seeing some of these more use cases. Like we're seeing them now start to come out, but I think there's really going to be a big head, and it's going to be about data availability and the breadth and scope of data which people are indexing, and how it's normalized.
I think this is a topic we can all agree on regarding Ethereum being the one that will first provide the entire tooling spectrum that will actually drive adoption in the future.
Yeah, I can add to this that we have completely similar thesis that we are right now fully focused on the multi-chain world, and I think the app chain thesis has been validated early. So basically, I completely agree with Eric that we are about to see thousands, maybe even like hundreds of thousands of app chains. And that's why our strategy of Subsquid is actually to make business with the chains. So basically, the idea is that the chains come to us, they pay for the data being provided by the Subsquid network, and while the data is free for all the consumers. So basically, it's a completely new business model, something that you would compare with the way that Spotify came about. Before Spotify, you would actually pay for each song. It's something like you pay for each request for RPCs. And with Subsquid, basically, you got unlimited access to all the data of all the chains. And this is actually what, at the end of the day, boosts the ecosystem for all the chains. So they are actually willing to pay for this data. And this is something that is already happening on the Polkadot space. And this is something that we envision will be more and more prevalent because the data is actually a public good. And the chains are very much interested to make sure that this data is very easy to get access to. While in the current situation, you either pay exorbitant fees to your RPC providers, or like you get some API providers, but at the end of the day, is the burden on the developer to actually pay fees like to get this data. While if the data is truly available and truly free, that actually gonna boost the productivity and like the way that you can actually build this, like wallets, aggregators, apps, analytics, real-time apps, like whatever. You still need to have RPC to send the data, like to submit transactions, but the data reads, I think, gonna be completely reworked in that way.
Okay,
But
like
I like the
this is a
Spotify now.
very, yeah, very
It's
interesting
value.
take, and completely agree with it. Um, so, taking this into consideration, I was wondering, uh, being data companies and all, do you see any trends regarding the type of new projects that are using your solutions currently? And in which of the industries do you think the solutions are more mature? And I'm talking here as an example, like if you see more DeFi projects that are starting to use data intensively, do you see games or wallet solutions or whatnot? Do you have any alphas that you can share with us at the moment?
Uh, yeah, our number one use case is, I mean, like commercial use case is definitely wallets. Like we have a lot of wallets. I think wallets are where it's the base layer of everything. So if you're building an application, like even when you're seeing some of our enterprise clients that are not even in Web3, the first thing they're building is a wallet. Because like before we build anything, we need a wallet. So and I think wallets are going to be like applications. Like there's no reason why every application can't have a built-in wallet to it. So I think these projects building like wallet SDKs, wallet things, like anything with wallet is interesting. That said, that's one vertical. I think my personal opinion is I think I have a background in gaming, so I think gaming is going to come. I don't think it's nearly as quick or as in demand as everybody is saying it is, because no one knows how these things are going to work. And if you talk to any of these AAA studios, they're like, "Yeah, it'll happen at some point. Is it tomorrow? Probably not. And are we going to, have a AAA 500, $500 million development game where we slap NFTs on top of it and the community hates on us, who's not familiar with how this stuff works? They're like, no. So we're going to invest in smaller companies and stuff like that. So I think gaming is super interesting. We're definitely starting to see some low level AI because, like I said, normalized data, you have bespoke custom requests. So we're definitely seeing AI. I think the use cases aren't great so far. I haven't seen anything that's made me jump for joy or get overly excited. But before all this stuff happens, I think it's going to be, I think it's TradFi summer. I don't care what anybody says. I think, like, if you see when there's bad news and prices are going up, it generally means large institutions are probably accumulating and keeping people out. So that's my hunch. I could be totally wrong, but I think you're going to see, like, from the demand we're seeing in the inbound clients we have, um, I think it's going to be a lot of reimagined CFI or gated DeFi or something like that, where we're starting to see a lot of renewed interest in that area. It's very interesting. It's like the dust has settled, the chaos has happened, and mature companies who were speculating about coming in or seem to be coming in very quietly under the radar. So it's an interesting time to be here.
A very interesting perspective, actually. Very educational. You always, I mean, talking to Eric, he always has a lot of predictions, and most of them came true, like since we know each other. So it's very interesting to hear you talk about TradFi Summer. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on it. So
But
at the
I,
next webinar, we'll see.
well, I don't think it'll be TradFi Summer the way we think it, because like it won't really impact us that much. Some of us maybe more than others, but I think it's just like you're going to see like some of these releases and some more press releases and things happening because I think the genie's out of the bottle. That like there is a market here, or the technology has reached a escape point. The thing is like no one knows what use cases are going to come next. So like that's my thought process. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be next week, next month. I think it'll. I think there'll be something, but it'll be very. It'll be like something we haven't seen before, but it'll be very different. It's sort of like every new technology. Like every time there's new technology, especially with crypto. Like crypto, like I was talking to a VC the other day, and he was saying how, man, everyone's talking about tokenizing everything, and I was like, yeah, this is just like 2018. And he said, oh, so you think it's a bubble? I said, no. I said the way crypto goes is we're here, and then we have these visions of where it's going to go, and then the price goes here, and then everyone talks about how this is going to happen tomorrow, and then the price goes back here, and then everyone, you know what I mean? And like everything is just in cycles. I'm like, so things need time. There's a lot of good ideas that always come in bull markets and that come in crypto, but like a lot of them just need 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, in some cases 4 years, just to breathe and figure out what they are and how to make them properly. So like everything that we've seen, I think is just a V1 or a V2. Like we haven't seen V3, V4 or any production. I feel like the whole space is still in beta mode. Only a couple of things really have product market fit.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I'm actually inclining to agree with you. Dima, do you have any uh,
Yeah, I can share
thoughts on the subject?
our experience. So currently, we have a very interesting bunch of products that a bunch of projects that are using Subsquid, and these are actually ML-driven projects that are very data hungry. So they are actually going. So, for example, they want to do some cluster analysis on the wallets. They want to predict, like, do targeted marketing, and they come with requests that okay, we need like to scrape all specific addresses, like we need to scrape all specific transactions, and it turned out that Subsquid is actually the only place where they get this like data at scale without hitting like hundreds of or like even thousands of like dollars per month, and I think that it is currently an interesting like sub niche to have projects that have very bespoke APIs, for example, rating NFTs, whether it is scam or not scam, like assessing liquidity, which is built on a very like specific machine learning algorithm. And in order to make it work, they actually need like a lot of raw data that they extract and that they actually come to us. And they normally also want to collect data from as many chains as possible, which is also kind of our strong point here. I think that this ad market gonna grow. There will be ads that are targeted to specific holders, for example, that have at least one ETH on their account, or they have traded apes, or like they have NFTs, and you get like some ad targeted to this specific account. I don't know exactly where this ad gonna be shown, maybe in wallet, maybe somewhere else. But it seems that people are very hungry to get some alpha and some insights from the on-chain activity, because this data in there, and it is possible to get this data, and you have kind of a critical mass for this data to make this interesting. As for like the future prediction, I'm actually I completely agree with Eric that there's probably going to be a lot of migration into like apps with an integrated wallet. So currently these two things are sort of separated. You have a wallet and you have an application, so you can like jump through and back and forth. I believe that breakthrough apps will be mobile first, because all the internet is coming mobile first. And I'm very bullish on light clients. Even in the wallet case, if you think about it, assuming that you have like 1 million users, everyone has a wallet. Like, what kind of infrastructure you need in order to handle like requests from 1 million of wallets? It's like tremendous load on the infrastructure. But then imagine that these wallets actually have a light client inside, and they can actually do the indexing on their own, and they only need like to get a single request to get the data that they need. That is a completely different way, and I think even in Web2 there is this kind of change in perception that many applications can actually get around without any API at all. Basically, you just have a file sitting on an S3 bucket that can handle a limited number of requests, and you have, say, a DuckDB database sitting inside the client's browser that can do queries directly into this file. And you have, for example, SQLite that sits directly on the client side. And with this kind of approach, you can actually scale to millions of users without even spending too much on the infrastructure, because you don't actually have an API server to serve this data. You get it, everything. You have everything on the device, and this is a very powerful approach. I don't think that we're there yet, but I believe that sooner or later we will have something interesting, and I believe that like data gonna be like the central part here, and the most of the computation over the data transformation gonna be on device, because then you have a lot more flexibility. You can add private data, you can add on-chain data. You don't have to care about this being reproducible, because you're on device. You don't have to have any specific trust assumptions. So and all this data is stored on chain, on device, like in this SQLite, for example. You can very easily query it, like whatever. So yeah, I'm pretty hyped like on this client-based approach.
Okay, wow, an amazing take. Like I never thought about it this way, but it feels right as soon as you said it. Like uh, making blockchain available to people just through the mobile, and that makes sense in a way. Like if you want to become mainstream, and talking about mainstream adoption, this is the last question for this session. I was thinking to have a little bit of a zoom out from the data perspective, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what would be some key elements that Web3 as an industry would need in order to become mainstream, whether it is regulation, better UX, better infrastructure, data availability, and so on. Just your opinions about it. Eric, you can go first because Dima just finished.
Yeah, I think that I think it's all of the above. I think, legislation needs to be better. I think people need to generally agree on some basic terminology. Like you have the US, which is like they've gone after some companies, they haven't gone after others. Like it's just so opaque and unclear how things actually work. So I think that'll just give everybody a big leg up. I mean, everyone is building CBDCs behind, like in the background. Like it's not a big surprise. Most governments have publicly said it. What type of infrastructure and supplemental tooling is required to get these things to market, like at a mass scale? I don't think anybody is there yet. I think from, even being operators, and we've been around for a long time, there's still so many unknown unknowns. And like if I was going to launch a CBDC and I had to work with any of the infrastructure providers in the space, I would say hard no. Like the technology is not there and it's not ready for anything at that scale. For 100% sure. Like not like if we, if there was to be a CBDC euro, it would for sure. We would be complaining. There'd be outages. Like there, you know what I mean. There'd be gaps in the data. Like there'd be so many issues. So I just don't think we're ready for that mainstream adoption. I think we're ready for iterative different types of adoption, that we will see it. I think it'll be like I think we're ready for something like I alluded to earlier, like a bank specific L what or like L2, right? That is tied to like to simulate DeFi and do those things, but in a regulatory environment that is all like a walled garden to keep people safe and not have them get rugged. So like I could see Aave being used for within JP Morgan like crypto team, right? Like it makes sense. Like it just there's KYC liquidity, where there's no counterparty risk, stuff like that. So I think when you think of that, that's probably the nearest term of things that are going to that are going to be coming. And then I think you'll see, like I said, give things time to breathe. Like a lot of the GameFi stuff, a lot of these brands, a lot of these NFTs. I think you'll see the next iteration, which will be like probably social. I think it'll be social related. I think it'll be other things, but it won't be social like one massive platform like a Facebook or an Instagram. It'll be like little pocket communities that are just all united because of Ethereum. And it's sort of like instead of having countries having a bunch of tiny little towns, and then you find out that like your cousin is in that town because you're part of the same NFT collection, so you just sort of venture over. So like that's where I think we're going to be going. I think it's not going to be like giant monolithic like the way we people have speculated it'll go, but I think it'll be more pocket oriented.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, moving over to Dima. What's your take about it?
Yeah, it's like really hard to speak about the future, right? Because there is always something that we think about based on we have already seen, and we are definitely very much biased. And then something completely unexpected comes, and we are like, oh, yeah, okay, this is how it works. Um, yeah, if we like try to extrapolate like what we are seeing right now, I think we're probably gonna see uh, more merging of Web3 and Web2 technologies. We already see a lot of brands and big enterprises jumping on the NFT hype, and to me, it feels like even after all this hype train has gone, there is a lot of tech around and still a lot of interest of like how to catch uh, this horizontal connection between the people, and NFTs, for example, are a very efficient way to do that. So this like soft connections and soft communities being formed around brands, around some interests, I think that will be somehow evolving into application, or maybe some tools, or like maybe some specific instruments that are specific, yeah, to this kind of like-minded people. And normally you would even have multiple avatars presented on the blockchain. And I think as long as people pay attention to this and care about this, there will be a lot of interest from brands, businesses, and everything in the attention economy, who will try to reach out to these people, monetize their attention, and get there. How exactly that gonna work, I have no idea, because I've just like last week seen this crazy TikTok video and like nam nam gang gang, oh, so good. And I think that this is just so crazy that it's probably the future. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably too old for this shit, but I think that this kind of like very quick attention, some really crazy shit happening, is where people eventually will funnel their attention, and then the money will just like follow this.
I totally agree. I think it'll be that. I think it, like I think it's I think it's a hybrid of what we both said. Like because you said like the opposite, but I was also thinking the same thing as you're going. I'm like, oh, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Like it'll be like somebody's gonna make a TikTok, and then they're going to mint NFTs that are only available for like private TikToks for like 2 weeks. Only the first 1,000 people who share and upvote and will get them, and then there'll be a secondary market for those NFTs to get those exclusive videos. Like it's just like I think token gating and engagement gating is going to be a huge thing. Like just to think back, like I have a friend, I can't remember the name of his product. He had this product, and like I'm dating myself a bit for depending on how old the people are watching this, but this was like when Facebook first introduced the like pages, so you could like follow pages or like pages. And he like gated his entire platform. So in order to log into his platform or get an account, you had to like their Facebook page. And then you would get something, or you'd get like a 25% coupon, or I don't remember what it was. So all of his things were about getting likes, because he realized the more likes he had on his Facebook page, the more effective his marketing was, right? It was much, much, much more effective. I think that like because Facebook got rid of that feature, because it was allowed people to game a system and get a bunch of likes on pages for like crappy pages. They got rid of that. But with NFTs, like you're taking that away from the platform. Like Facebook got rid of that, but if you're an individual influencer and you're leveraging TikTok or Instagram, you can 100% like come up with something. It's just like I don't think the smart contracts for that level of sophistication around NFTs, where the platforms that support them, are there yet. But like once you can have like a variability, like if this and like an IFTT of how your NFTs are going to work, and like how you're going to plug in like all these APIs from other providers, I think that's sort of the home run, where it's going to be like these pocket communities are just they're going to fly, and everything will just get leveraged into something else. Like it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I am very bullish on degens, like the way that people can degen. I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be surprised many times, like how degen people can be.
I don't think that's I don't think it's the degens in the way we know
Like
them.
retarded, maybe a better way.
Yeah, like I think it's going to be like I knew this girl years ago. She was one of the first people to launch when it was called. Now they're called DAOs, but they were just called social tokens. Like she had this idea where she gave away. You needed X amount of coins to watch a specific live stream she was doing of her own token, and so she minted these tokens, and then there was only like I think like because this is like she gave them she put it up and gave them to her fans and like said, hey, send your email and you need to create a wallet and I'll send you these. And then so these were like free tokens. Just wanted to like try this loyalty thing out. And the secondary market for her tokens, which she was giving away for free, because she's only giving away like 100 spots to this virtual like conference, and like she was going to send everybody dinner or like a gift card to like buy food so they could all eat together. It was a neat idea, very community focused. But the secondary market ended up being like $850 for one of these, just for one token. Like if you like, I can't, yeah. And that's all it was, but because like she just gave it away, and some people were like, well, I'm going to sell mine, and people who are crypto native were like, oh, this is a specific thing, and it was like, but it wasn't an NFT, it was like it was an ERC20, And I think back on that, and I was like, that was so crazy, but that actually happened, and it actually like it worked. It created a secondary market for people who really didn't want to watch the concert and were like, I'll get this because I'm a fan, but like I'd rather have money than I would an experience.
That reminds me Wi-Fi tokens, right? Like zero utility, but then it's like 20K per token. Because everyone was simping for Andre.
This is why you gotta love this space. Before we started discussing, I was thinking about education as a key element, but now after discussing and
The
hearing your
education.
thoughts, yeah, exactly. I think there has to be a way in which we can adapt education about everything that happens with blockchain technology, because blockchain technology is quite hard to grasp for the average people, and the DeFi it's even harder to comprehend. But maybe we need a way to adapt the way we do education to the attention span that the new generations have. And because you see on Twitter, it's like if it takes more than 10 seconds to look over, it's like not getting read or something like that. So we basically need a way to adapt the way we send our messages to the attention span that we have during these days. And yeah, maybe that way we can even drive a little bit the direction, but who knows, it's uh, quite a bet. Well, I think this concludes our session for today. It was really fun to have you guys here. I think there were very interesting thoughts on the matter of blockchain data availability on the industry in general. I mean, I found it very educative for myself. I think I'm gonna watching it again once it's already in after post production. But yeah, I want to thank you for taking the time to have this discussion, and wish you the best of luck in all that you guys are trying to achieve, because data availability is one of the most important challenges that we need to solve in order to bring more adoption to the blockchain. Thank you.
Definitely.
Was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Later, guys.